So second part of the lesson after break. Before the break, we just clone it up, set it up project on Firebase, and make sure that it's working. Right? So this is what we did for the first half. First half is recorded. For the second half, let's first browse code very quickly, and after this, go through her explanations. And the name of the app is, call it Make It So in the original version. And when I recreated project from scratch, actually, I didn't change her code directly. I created project from scratch, and I was copy-pasting stuff. The reason is that it is, when we use new libraries with new version of Android Studio, it is easier just to create project from scratch and copy-paste code than try to dive into all settings of Android Studios in some hidden files, try to find them, and it is far bigger issue, actually, than recreating project from scratch and copy-pasting. So that was the approach. As already mentioned before, her code is using Material Design 2, and when you create a new project, that will be Material Design 3 by default. So this is why copy-paste just won't work unless you stick using to Material Design 2 libraries all the time. It is not too big deal in terms of changes, but it is going carefully almost everywhere and changing. Additional information, she is not referring to particular locations of the file, so this is why I felt free just to move files around. So in this version, it may be just different location of the file, but it's still logical. In her code, she deleted this UI folder, so she just doesn't have this UI folder. I don't know, her decision. Also renamed packages, renamed to-do list from Make It So, but still you see that sometimes Make It So because of the copy-paste. I tried to, when I was moving code around, I didn't change sequence of the logic in her code. And one of the reasons why I didn't want to change it, because I didn't want to make mistake by accident. Because I'm still new to it. So if it looks logical to me, maybe it's logical, but who knows? So I decided that in this version, it will be just her sequence, but with some modifications in terms of reorganizing code. She already is working for second version, so I look up second version, and I tried to do reorganization similar to her second version. So it's not totally coming from my mind, it's coming from other Google examples and her second version. Okay. So let's continue. Her logic, business logic is in data service. In her second version of the code, she renamed all services into repositories. So I assume it's not a big deal, but since her explanation is referring to service, I didn't rename to repositories to stay consistent with her text. So when we read text, it will be consistent. Okay. So, and again, it is the reorganization and just tedious change of API. One thing to be aware of. So let's start this because it's not obvious. I will open some projects like created before, like open that we did in class, I don't know. Doesn't matter which one. Project like last one, what did we do last one? I think it was restaurants app, right? Open restaurants. New window. Here it is. In the restaurants app, or still it's, you don't have to open it. I just want to compare two projects. Okay. Because she's not talking about it, but it's important because if your assignment is based on this example, you need to be aware of this difference. Okay, project Android. Okay. So in restaurants app, and it is the same in all examples, I will show that main activity. This is main activity. Okay, is inheriting from component activity. So when you create project the way how we did, new project, empty activity with compose, it will create main activity inheriting from component activity. Okay. Now let's open this one, main activity. You see, it is inheriting from different piece. What is the reason for it? Okay, this is when you do assignment 4, it does not matter, but it matters for this project. Why? This program, this one, is using this pop-up for date, this one, and for pop-up for time. Okay. We also had another example, and that was kind of product list. Our product list example also had pop-up for date and pop-up for time. But that pop-ups are implemented differently. I did one pop-up. Original example from Google didn't have it at all. So I added just to show how to do it. Yes, question?
Are those pop-ups built in, or are they created?
No, it's part of the program. You have to write code for it. Okay. There is also example file open, and let's okay. Product list. I want to open that one as well. It is new window. I will stop this from running because I don't want to run two at the same time, right? So this is not running. And this is to-do list. Not to-do, it is product list. In product list, we have data, local repository. Okay, here it is. Remember, like pen, pencil, we have similar thing, but our data is stored in local database. When we edit this piece, edit, I can cancel, no. Edit. Edit it is this button. I added two buttons myself. In original code, it wasn't there. Like this is to edit date, and this is to edit time. Okay. And you see it is somewhat look differently. Not exactly the same, it's different. So in UI, product form, I have time picker dialog is created from scratch. You see? It is using base dialog class, and in the base dialog class, it was inserted time picker. A time picker component. Where is that? Let's find. Column content. Oh no, so sorry. Let's check where it is. Dialog properties. And where the content is coming from? Content compose. Okay. I lost where it is itself, where it is contents, role space, dismiss. Okay. When it is called, I set content outside of it. All right. So this is on click of this button. So products form body. Form. No. Product form. Okay, so date picker dialog, this date picker dialog, this is library function. You see material design, material 3, date picker dialog. It is this one. But time picker dialog, show time picker, this one. It is not here because it is here, right? It is done from scratch. But what it is using time picker composable, which is not dialog. So somehow, somehow material design 3 for compose provides date picker dialog, but it doesn't provide time picker dialog at all. So in order to get time picker dialog, for this, it has to be done from scratch by creating dialog, generic dialog, and inserting time picker. Why? It's missing feature. Why it's missing? It's not a question to me. It's to Google. Okay? In Compose, there is no time picker dialog. It has to be done in two places by combining two things, generic dialog and time picker. And what happens, it is this one, and it is not the same what you saw in her program. In her program, time picker date picker dialog, it sort of looks similar, but still not the same. Why? This program is using only Compose for GUI for most of the things. But two things are done for demonstration purpose. That is not done with Compose. This is not done with Compose, this one. And this is not done with Compose. It is just as a demo. By the way, Compose does not provide rating bar. There's no such option. But there is definitely drop-down list. It looks different, but it's available. It's not one composable. You have to combine two things, but it's possible to do. All right? So this program is combining Compose and views for some parts. But this program still has main activity inheriting from component activity, the same as restaurant tab. You see? So issue is not using views. Views can be used with component activity, because this program is using views in the same code. But why she has to use compat activity? It is not because of the views. It is because of the fragments. She is using not dialogues, how it is done in product list. She is using dialog fragments in her code. Right? So, in screens, edit screen, edit task. Okay? Edit task screen, edit task screen, scrolling. Here it is. Material date picker, builder date picker build. What is this one? Date picker in this case is not composable function. It's a fragment. This one. Okay. Date picker. Okay. Material date picker, time picker, material time picker. So first, for the time, she is using library function, right? But she is using fragment. I remember what we talked about fragment, right? It is totally separate from composables, but it can be used together with composables. What is fragment? Some GUI with some code. And libraries do provide some fragments by default. Okay? So GUI without compose provides two fragments, material date picker and material time picker. They're not composable functions, they're fragments. But in order to use them, you have to use fragment manager. Okay, so let's find it. Here it is. So she created picker, a picker for dialog, right? For time, right? And for date, right? This is activity, which is okay. right? Let defines it, and it refers to this variable, to activity. So it inside of let refers to activity. And in order to show dialog, you have to use it support fragment manager. Okay. In both cases. Because she is opening fragment dialog. Dialog is a fragment. Okay. So this and this. She is using support fragment manager to open these dialogs. If you look up code from product list, there's no fragment there because I never use it here. In general, yes, I did use it when I taught this course before, long ago. When we had fragments, we didn't have compose. But in issue is that, you see, this is the property of activity, right? The same. Support fragment manager is property of activity. But the question is which activity? It is not property of component activity. This is the issue. So in order to get support fragment manager, you have to use app compat activity, and not this one. Okay? So, in use assignment 4, if you want time dialogues or date dialogues, and you don't want to deal with fragments, you go with the logic of product list. And you don't need to deal with app compat activity. App compat activity is necessary for her only because she needs support fragment manager out of that activity. And support fragment manager is not available in component activity. It's not there. Component activity doesn't have such property. Okay. So this is the reason why she changed default one component activity into app compat activity. But it's not end of the story. Okay. Because it's app compat activity, you need to change styles for that are matching app compat activity. Right? So if you open this piece, in resources, values, themes, you will see this stuff, right? Okay. Now, let's open this stuff in to-do list. You will see it as the same because not to-do is not the same. Product list will be the same as this one. Restaurants app. Resource, values, themes. You see it is the same. Okay. Because this theme is set up for component activity. And now let's open this business for to-do list. Resource, values, themes. Different logic, right? If you keep the same logic, it will not work. You have to make it consistent to app compat activity. Because this is for component activity. And this is for app compat activity. So it is not just changing name of the class where you inherit from. You also have to change themes, otherwise it will not work right. Next. Okay, you see that it is change is propagating. Where this is coming from? It is not her code. And why it's not her code? And because her code is for material design 2, but this code is for material design 3. It's not copy-pastable. So where did I get it? Obviously, I didn't make it up because, yeah, too much guessing. So what did I do to get this piece? I did new project, and I created project with basic activity. Because when you create project with basic activity, it will create project with app compat activity, so you will know how to define theme for it. Okay? So I created, I created project for classic views that comes with app compat, and I look it up, how should I define themes for material design 3 in that empty project. And looking up in there, I could copy-paste and just rename this project name. Because her original stuff doesn't work. It is for material design 2, but this is for material design 3. So this is a trick. All right? Questions? So this is because she wanted to use dialog fragments. Okay? To-do list is following her logic with dialog fragments. And this is why it needs app compat activity. Because in order to open dialog fragments, you need to have access to fragment manager that is opening it. But component activity doesn't have fragment manager in it. So this is extra thing to know. She doesn't care about explaining it at all. Just she's keeping it. But this, in order to understand why it's done, because her dialogues need to open it as fragments. Okay? So again, if in assignment 4 you want dialogues, you don't have to repeat app compat unless you really want to repeat the same logic. You can do it dialogue the same way as it's done in product list. Okay? Questions? If you in her code, this part is totally different. Obviously, it's for different version of material design. I think it's frozen. Yes, it's frozen. So Android Studio is frozen for me, so I need to kill it. Monitor. Here it is. Android Studio. No, it's not frozen. If it's frozen, it will be in red. Maybe it has pop-up. This is why. It's not frozen because pop-up. Okay, I couldn't interact because it was pop-up. So this is how it was generated. It was generated regular way, and I assume that she just renamed it inheritance from app compat, and because she renamed it inheritance from compat, she had to redo this file herself. Perhaps copy-pasted from project generated for material design 2. Okay. So this is to be aware of if you use her code in your assignment, just to know. I will keep it around for the purpose of explaining how to insert views. So this is using views inside. But for now, I'm just closing it. To-do list and restaurants app is also closed. So this is one of the features of her app. It is using app compat because she's using dialog fragments in it. what else is so interesting? About her code. She definitely refers to own code, which is fine. It is the same, essentially the same thing, but rearrange it and rename it. Where is her code? So if you download your code, you need to be aware of one more thing. At the bottom, there is a link to her code. You can clone this source on GitHub repository. If you're also interested in Mac, there is also a link to Mac. So here it is. Making so Android. You see there is a final and there is a start. It appears like this is Android Studio project, but with two versions of it. It's not Android Studio project. Android Studio project is actually this folder. So in order to clone this code, you need to use either Android Studio or some other software, but after you clone it, you cannot run it because it's not Android Studio project. So after this, you need to copy this folder out and open this as Android Studio project. So this is, and by the way, you cannot run it, you need to change also some settings, yes?
Would it make more sense if instead of having a folder for start and final, they just make different branches?
It would make sense to me, but she didn't do it. This is how Google does it. In Google tutorials, they just have starting branch, finishing branch, right? But she created two different folders, and it creates extra inconvenience because after you clone it, you have to copy it out and open this as Android Studio. It's definitely like starting, but this is Android Studio project, and this is Android Studio project. Why she did it, I have no idea. This is her design decision, okay? To be aware of if you want to open it. When you open it, it will ask to update this Android Gradle plugin. As typically after this, eventually it will start working, but again, it will be all around material design tool libraries. So you cannot copy paste it into new project code unless you also copy paste all libraries. Reference to 2 design, not 3. Right, she also has, this is version 1. She also has version 2 somewhere. It's not here. There is a branch. For version 2, there is a branch. This one. So this is how to see her version 2. And this is what I know what she's doing. But version 2 is just started. It's not even half done. So we cannot really use it for learning in this moment. So this is about idea about where to get code. Now let's see organization of it. Okay. I keep it around. To-do list, week 10. Here it is. This is going to explanation. And first thing that she is explaining is just general organization of the code. And essentially, it is repeating what we already know. Because this project does not have, in terms of organization of the code, it is nothing new because our previous examples were following design, what is called? Design guide, architecture guide from Google. So she is following architecture guide. So today I plan to, this is just introduction. This part is talking about architecture of the app. General introduction of what features will be covered, and it will be 10 parts. Some are smaller. And this is how it was originally look like. Right? And this is animation, so she's doing demo of it. Okay. It does work if you just, if you update a Android Gradle plugin, it does work. But of course, if you try to change to newer libraries, it won't work. So it's not copy-pastable into assignment, but you can run it and play with it. So next, she's talking about APP architecture and talks about UI layer, which will have screens and view models associated with screens. She does not, in her code, she does not have view models associated with activities. So she is using healed view models. Healed view models allows us to create view models that are associated with screens. Currently, it is only a way to associate view model with the screen. If you use just regular view model function, not healed view model function, this view model will be associated with activity, so it will be global. So she doesn't have global view models. Good or bad, I don't know. This is her decision. Next, she separates business logic into services. And services are injected into view models. So services are not accessed directly from GUI, obviously. They are injected similarly to repositories into view models. And view models are accessed on screens, in composable screens, the usual way how we did it by calling view model function, but called healed view model function. Like in restaurant app, by calling healed view model function. Next, services are injectable, but Firebase has own API. So she's using services as extra layer between Firebase API and view models to connect these pieces by injection, because you cannot inject Firebase into view model. So she adds also extra logic into services. Also, Firebase itself is not able to create flows. So she is creating flows from Firebase API inside of services. So far, we used flows created by Root database, right? We didn't use other flows. But since Firebase does not give you flow directly, she has to create this object. Because, yeah, she doesn't really have to, but she is doing this as a demo, so she is doing it. Okay? So she is creating flows inside of the service using Firebase API. So it is an extra step of complexity if you compare this to Root database, which is giving you flow right away. So this is the logic of this part. Next, she is explaining things that we already know from other examples, that a view model is storing state, and view model is updating state, right? When you call some functions of view model, it is updating state. Or also state can be updated when new data comes. Right? Firebase API is by callback. So you provide a function to be called when data is updated on the server side. Since she created flows, so she is using API for the flow to call these callbacks, to connect to listener for updates. So there is a listener you will see in the code. that is notified of updates. But anyway, UI logic is the same as before because the magic is inside of the service, right? Because flow is created inside of the service and given to view model. Since view model has flow, logic of this layer is similar to what we already know. It is dealing with flows and suspend functions. Okay? So organization of UI layer is the same. Organization of this, similar, right? Except she has repositories in our examples didn't create flows, but in her case, it is creating flow because Firebase doesn't give you flow. Okay. Accessing view model in composable functions. So she's talking that she's using healed view model to make it injectable. So in composable functions, she has parameter view model, and it is assigned to call of healed view model by default. So in a restaurant app, we have the same, right? Or really close to that. Healed view model behaves similarly to view model function, except if you do this in screen associated with destination, scope of this view model will be limited to the destination. So if you navigate away, it may be gone. Okay. So this is also similar to restaurants app because restaurants is using health view models injected into screens. Not injected, but added as a parameter to screens. Right. Next. She is explaining things here. What I explained for other examples, it is the same logic. So screen reflecting UI state stored in view model, and events in the screen when you click on something are calling functions of view model. Right? So when you click on something, you call function of the model, it updates states and state reflected on the screen. So this is typical logic of UI. States are stored in view models, screen is reflecting content of the state, or variable values from the state. Okay. Next. What if you need to update database? It's not just updating state here, right? Because if you have a database, in this case, there is a database, it is on cloud, it is not just updating state locally, it propagates to calling the service. So event here is calling function from view model, and function of view model is calling some function of the service. And some function of the service is calling some functions of Firebase API. Then update goes to cloud. There is a listener here in Firebase receiving notifications from cloud. And when update happens, a listener is notified. Her flow function will receive some new data. This flow function is linked to view model, right? And through some data transformations, we have new state. And new state is reflected on the screen. So when we click on something, not on this, because this is local state. Until you click save, this is local state. But When you go back to this screen, when you click on this part, remember when you click and it didn't show up because database couldn't reflect it, right? It wasn't indexed. Remember that situation. When this checkbox couldn't do because we didn't set it up on Firebase side. Why did it happen? Because when you click it on this, when we click it on this checkbox, chain goes to cloud and to the server. When data is updated on the server, a listener is notified, listener is inserting data into the flow, we have flow transformation, and eventually flow is changing UI state, so we have flow states, and it is reflected on the screen. So in the logic of this program, when we click on this, it goes this way to the cloud before we see check mark on the screen. This is why we didn't see check mark, because logic was broken. Okay? This is not a bug, it's a feature. Why it is feature? It is called single source of truth. Because in this case, who is the owner of the data? Yes, right? And only owner is changing it. Right? So single source of truth, we don't have duplicates of changeable data. And changeable data only here. Other things are just copy of this data, and that is not changeable. So she is implementing design recommendation from Google, single source of truth. Only owner of the data is able to change it. And in this case, owner of the data is Firebase. So before we see change on the screen, we have all this stuff going to cloud and going back to the screen. What is for? To avoid inconsistencies. Because if we don't deal with if we don't implement single source of truth, we may get inconsistent data. For example, if we duplicate variable here somewhere to the checkbox, right? Oh, of course, we click on this, checkbox variable is updated, we see it on the screen. But and of course we want to launch this thing. But what if this connection fails? In this case, we'll get inconsistent data. Check mark on the screen, but not check mark on the database. Right? It's a source of bugs and source of wrong data, right? Because check marks can mean something important, right? So this is why she's implementing, like religiously, this is single source of truth. But what if we do edit? This data is not owned by database till you click save, right? And this is why we deal with local copy till we click save. But when we click save, what happens? When we click it save, data goes to Firebase, and this page receives data from Firebase, and not the copy that was edited by edit screen. Because a copy edited by edit screen, it was even a different view model. It is even hard to access it even, because it's different view model, right? So again, what we see on the screen is coming from Firebase. But when we edit it, it is local copy because it's owned by that view model associated with that screen. So this is the logic of data flow. next. She said we use different view models associated with the screens and view models receiving injection of services. So she is implementing business logic using services, right? So she has log service. Log, it's not login. It is log in terms of like messaging, save message. She has storage service. This is to store this stuff. Account service is dealing with login, create accounts, this stuff. Why do you need account service here? In edit. Okay. It is logical that you need to have account service in edit screen because when you save the data, it should save data in the branch of the given user, not another user. So it needs to know user ID. This is why edit screen has also access to account service, because it needs to know user ID, essentially. By the way, let's see those screens, okay? So let's see the data. This is Firebase, right? Click on Firestore database. And now, tasks. Okay? So, tasks is collection. This collection contains documents. This is documents. And this is ID of a user. Am I right? No. Let's see. Let's think. Where is the user ID? No, sorry. This is not user ID. This is task ID. User ID is this one. So she doesn't have a folder. She doesn't have a folder for user. She has user ID inside of the task. So this is actually a task, right? So she, instead of implementing like folder for user and task for the user, all tasks are the same. They just mark it with user ID. But when she is doing query, most likely she is selecting only task with the user ID, which is current user ID, right? Because we don't want to see tasks of another user. And it is indeed the case. If we look up, there is a query for this list. This screen is called a task screen. And in tasks view model, you will see that we call storage service. We have update, delete. But where it's, here it is. And this is the flow. So storage service tasks is the flow. How do I know? I look at it up. Storage service. So let's open that storage service. Storage service interface. Okay. Tasks is the flow of list of tasks. Okay. But this flow is not given by Firebase, it's created by implementation of the service. Okay. In order to create this flow, she needs to create a query to select tasks specific for the specific user, right? So if we open implementation of this storage service, so implementation storage service, we will see that she is actually selecting tasks where user ID field is equal to current user ID. Okay. We will talk about this, but it is the place how she is implementing it. Tasks is collection of all tasks for all users. But this query is selecting only task for the given user ID. Another option would be created, instead of folder task, to create folder of users, right? And every user has own tasks in the folder. So just different organization. I'm not sure if it's better or not, but it's just different. I saw program written this way when we have folders for users and stuff associated with that users separately. It was in example for older GUI, so I cannot really reuse it here. Unless I rewrite it, and I don't want to rewrite it. It's long. It's even longer than this one. Okay, so what time is it? It's 5 minutes left. So let's see, again, this will be explained, but not at this moment. Let's continue with whole logic here. Okay. So she said that in order to make service injectable, she is creating modules. But scope of this service, she is using view model scope. Yeah, it's possible to limit scope of injection to view models, but in her code, when you open it, she made it global, actually. So what is on the screen here is not the same as in her code. She made everything global for simplicity in actual code. For any reason, I believe it's probably simplicity. So it is possible to limit scope of the injection, but she didn't do it, actually, in her code. And binds is used to connect implementation and interface. This is how we did before, and it's all around in the examples in like Restaurants app. Questions? So this is just for any service, she's doing the same logic. Task screen, it is composable, and it is not the first thing what you see, unfortunately. When we start the app, it appears like we see this first, but it's not. There is an extra screen that it is setting up user logic. It is flash up screen, and it is a quick, or it shows up rolling. So this is a roll animation. And this is actually not the first screen. First screen, okay. Is this screen what you saw? This with rotation, it is actually a separate screen with own view model. So that screen with the rotation piece has own view model, and that view model is dealing with logins. This is why in her navigation, first thing to show it is not this. This is not the first one. So what is about? She is talking initializing the composable functions, and we don't assign it directly. We just don't provide it, and system will see that it's not assigned, so it will call view model. And next, I will remember that I stopped at navigation graph. Okay, so first link explanation stopped at navigation graph. Okay. I will continue next time from this point. Questions? It's time to go. It's 5 o'clock almost. Okay, so I will stop recording.